I still remember the taste of that Tuesday morning. Cold oatmeal, powdered milk that never quite mixed right. Same breakfast I'd eaten for 16 years at St. Catherine's Home for Girls in Cleveland, Ohio. But that particular Tuesday in March was different, and I did not know it yet. I was sitting on the edge of my narrow bed folding my last shirt into a torn canvas bag when Sister Marguerite knocked on the door. She never knocked. In 16 years, she had never once knocked before entering a girl's room. That was the first thing that told me something was wrong. She stood in the doorway a long moment before she spoke. In her hand was a white envelope. She held it the way a person holds something they do not quite know what to do with. "Marin," she said, and her voice was softer than I had ever heard it. "Sweetheart, come sit with me a minute. I was 16 years old. My name is Marin Cole, and up until that morning I had believed I was alone in the world." Sister Marguerite sat down beside me on the bed. The springs creaked. She smelled like the same lavender soap she had used since I was small enough to fit on her lap. She looked at the envelope in her hands and then she looked at me. "You are old enough to hear the truth," she said. "Your grandfather passed away last week, and he left you something." I stared at her. I opened my mouth to say something. Nothing came out. I did not have a grandfather. I did not have anyone. My mother had dropped me off at the front steps of St. Catherine's when I was 2 months old. That was the story I had been told. That was the story I had believed. There was no grandfather. There was no anyone. "His name was Walter Brenner," Sister Marguerite said. "He lived in Nebraska, and he has been sending us letters for you every single year since you turned 4. We were not permitted to give them to you until you were 16. The room went very quiet. I could hear the radiator ticking against the wall. I could hear a bus going by on Euclid Avenue outside. I could hear my own heart pounding in my ears like something trying to get out. Sister Marguerite pressed the envelope into my hands. "There is a man coming for you today," she said. "Your uncle, your mother's brother. His name is Trevor Brenner. He is your legal guardian now. He will be here at noon." I looked down at the envelope. The paper was thick and cream-colored. My name was written across the front in blue ink. The handwriting was careful the way an older person writes each letter, drawn slow and steady. Marin, just Marin, like I was a person he already knew. I did not open it in front of her. I could not. I put it in the pocket of my coat and I zipped it shut. Sister Marguerite stood up. She smoothed the front of her dress. She looked at me one more time, and there was something in her eyes I had never seen before. It looked like she was trying not to cry. "Your grandfather loved you, Marin," she said. "He wrote every year, every single year. I want you to know that." Then she was gone. I sat there on the bed with my torn canvas bag and everything I owned inside it, and for the first time in my 16 years of life, I had a family member, and he was already dead. Have you ever found out something about yourself that changed the whole shape of your world, something that made you sit very still? Because if you move, the ground might come apart under you. If you have, I would love it if you would leave me a comment down below and tell me your story. Because that morning, that was me, sitting very still, trying not to move. Trevor Brenner arrived at 11:45, and he did not look like anyone who belonged to me. He was a tall man in his mid-40s. He wore a gray suit that fit him too well and shoes that clicked on the linoleum floor. He wore a gold watch on his left wrist. He smelled like expensive aftershave and cigarettes. He had my mother's eyes, though I did not know that yet. I did not know what my mother's eyes looked like. He stood in the front parlor of St. Catherine's with his hands in his pockets, and he looked me up and down like I was a piece of furniture he was thinking about buying. Then he checked his watch. "You are Marin," he said, not a question. "Yes, sir." "That all your stuff?" I nodded. The canvas bag hung from my shoulder. My whole life fit inside it. A few clothes, a hairbrush, a paperback of Anne of Green Gables I had read 40 times, a photograph of Sister Marguerite and me from when I was 10, and now in the pocket of my coat a letter from a dead man. Trevor Brenner looked at Sister Marguerite and signed some papers. He did not look at me while he signed them. Then he turned and walked out the front door of the only home I had ever known and expected me to follow. I did. The car was black and shiny and smelled like leather and money. He put my bag in the trunk without a word. He got in the driver's seat. He did not open my door for me. I got in the passenger side and I put my hands in my lap and I did not know what to do with them. We were on the highway before he spoke to me. "We have a long drive ahead," he said. "About 11 hours. You should have used the bathroom before we left." "I did." He nodded. He did not look at me. We drove for almost 20 miles before he spoke again. "There are some things you need to know," he said, "about the situation." I waited. "Your grandfather owned a piece of property out in Nebraska. Little diner on a state highway. He left it to you in his will. That is what this is all about. The will is going to probate, but I am your guardian now, so we will handle it together. Together, there is some paperwork, some decisions to make. I will walk you through everything. I did not say anything. You are a lucky girl, he said, and the way he said it made my stomach turn cold. Most kids in your situation do not get anything. You are getting a piece of dirt in the middle of nowhere, but dirt is worth money if you know what to do with it. He glanced at me for the first time. You do want money, do you not? Marrying a girl your age coming out of the system, no education past high school, no family. Money is the thing that is going to keep you off the street. You understand that? Yes, sir. Good. He turned his eyes back to the road. The letter in my coat pocket felt heavy against my ribs. I put my hand over it. I did not take it out. I was not going to read it in front of him. We drove for another hour. Then he said, in the same flat voice he used to talk about the weather, there is something else you should know. Your mother is still alive. I stopped breathing. The car kept moving. The highway lines kept sliding past. But I was not moving. I was sitting perfectly still in the passenger seat, and the whole world had narrowed down to the space between my ribs where my breath had stopped. She is not in your life, Trevor said. She has not been for a long time. She had problems. Drugs mostly. She left you at the home when you were a baby. She disappeared for years. About 3 years ago, she called me. Wanted money. I sent her some. She disappeared again. That is the story. He said it like he was reading a shopping list. I am telling you because you are going to be an adult in 2 years and you deserve to know. Do not go looking for her. She is not the person you want to find. I sat there in the passenger seat with the sun going down over the flat brown fields of western Ohio, and I did not cry. I did not speak. I did not move. I had a mother. I had a mother and she was alive and she had left me. If you are still with me, would you do something? Take a breath with me for a second, because I had to. That moment in the car, I had to remember how to breathe. And sometimes when I tell this story, I still have to remind myself. So take a breath with me, and then let's keep going, because the strangest part of my life had not even started yet. We drove all night. Trevor stopped once for gas and a coffee. He handed me a granola bar and a bottle of water without a word. We crossed into Indiana, then Illinois, then Iowa. The land got flatter and darker. The towns got smaller. Somewhere past me, I fell asleep against the cold glass of the window. When I woke up, the sun was coming up over the plains of Nebraska. I had never seen land like that in my life. It stretched out on both sides of the highway as far as my eyes could see. Golden brown and empty. Silos rising up out of the fields like church steeples. Long rows of dead corn stalks bent by winter. A single tractor moving slowly across a distant field so far away it looked like a toy. The sky was enormous. I did not know a sky could be that big. We passed a sign that said Millbrook population 3412. Trevor took the exit. The town of Millbrook was a single main street with brick storefronts, most of them still in business. A hardware store. A pharmacy with a sign that said Fountain inside. A feed store with sacks of grain stacked in the window. A little Methodist church with a white steeple and a hand-painted sign that read All are welcome. It was 7 in the morning and the streets were nearly empty, except for 2 old men drinking coffee on a bench outside the diner. We drove through town. Trevor did not slow down. He drove out the other side and onto a 2-lane highway that ran straight and flat toward the horizon. Route 9, I saw the diner from a quarter-mile away. It was a low brick building sitting alone at the edge of the road. Flat roof, cracked front window, a steel pole out front with a sign shaped like an old-fashioned lantern painted yellow and rust red. The paint on the sign was faded, but you could still read the letters. The lantern. And underneath in smaller letters that had almost worn off, open late. And in the front window, even though it was full daylight, a small lamp was burning. Trevor pulled the car into the gravel lot and shut off the engine. He sat there for a moment with his hands on the wheel, and I watched him look at the building, and something crossed his face that was not quite disgust and not quite grief. It was something closer to embarrassment. There it is, he said, your inheritance. Across the road was another small brick building with a hand-painted sign that read Hodges Feed and Hardware. Even at that early hour, a light was on inside. And as I sat there in the passenger seat, looking at my grandfather's diner for the first time, the door of the feed store opened, and an older man stepped out onto the sidewalk. I was maybe 65 or 70, stocky, wearing a canvas work coat and a green John Deere cap. He was wiping his hands on a rag. He looked across the road at Trevor's black car, and then he saw me sitting in the passenger seat, and he stopped moving. He just stood there and looked at me. I looked back at him. His face was doing something I did not know how to read. His mouth was slightly open. His hands had stopped wiping. He was looking at me like I was a ghost. Trevor got out of this car. He did not notice the old man. He went to the back of the diner to open the door with a key he pulled from a manila envelope. I got out of the car more slowly. I stood on the gravel and I looked across the road at the old man in the John Deere cap. He crossed the road toward me. He walked slowly, careful with his knees. When he reached me, he stopped a few feet away and he took off his cap and he held it against his chest with both hands. "You must be Marin," he said. His voice cracked on my name. "Lord, look at you. You look just like her." "Like who?" He shook his head. He blinked hard. "Like your grandmother. Like Eleanor. You look just like Eleanor did when she was your age." I did not know I had a grandmother named Eleanor. I did not know I looked like anyone. The old man wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. He held out his other hand to me. "My name is Silas Hodge," he said. "I have been keeping the light on for you." Trevor came back around the corner of the diner then, and he saw us standing there, and I watched his face harden. "Can I help you?" he said to Silas. His voice was cold. "This is private property." Silas did not look at Trevor. He kept looking at me. "I have known your grandfather 40 years, he said. "I promised him I would be here when you came. So here I am." Trevor stepped between us. He put a hand on the small of my back, and it was not a kind hand. It was a hand that said, "Come with me now." "Marin has business to attend to inside," Trevor said. "If you will excuse us." Silas did not move. He looked at Trevor a long moment. Then he looked back at me. "I am right across the road, honey," he said. "You need anything, anything at all, you come see me." Then he turned and walked back toward the feed store. I watched him go. He walked like a man carrying something heavy, though his hands were empty. Trevor guided me toward the back door of the diner. His hand did not leave my back until I was inside. If someone you had never met looked at you like they had known you your whole life, what would that feel like? Because that was Silas Hodge. And I want you to remember him. He is going to be important later. Hit that subscribe button if you are feeling this story so far. And let's keep going. The back door opened into a kitchen. I stopped in the doorway. The smell hit me first. Bacon grease worked deep into the vents. Coffee, burnt sugar, wood polish, and underneath all of it, something warmer and older that I did not have a word for. It was the smell of a place where people had been fed for a very long time. The kitchen was clean. Cleaner than a kitchen had any right to be in a building that had been closed for a year. The steel counters gleamed. The flat-top griddle was oiled and wiped. A cast-iron skillet hung on a nail above the stove. A dish towel had been folded and placed neatly on the edge of the sink. Someone had been keeping this kitchen. My grandfather had been dead for a week. Someone had still been keeping his kitchen. I walked out into the dining room and I stopped again. The morning light was coming in through the front windows in long yellow bars. 6 booths along the windows, their red vinyl seats cracked and taped. A counter with 8 chrome stools. A pie case empty now, its glass cloudy with age. A chalkboard on the wall behind the counter. And on it, in careful block letters, written by a hand, I did not know the words today. Pot roast, cornbread, and whatever you need. I stood there in the middle of the room and I read those last words 3 times. Whatever you need. That was not a menu item. That was something else. And I did not know what it was. Trevor was already in the back office going through papers. I could hear him opening drawers and muttering to himself. I walked slowly through the dining room. I ran my hand along the counter. I felt the grooves worn into the wood by decades of plates and elbows and coffee cups set down hard. There was a photograph in a wooden frame on the wall beside the register. A young man in a paper hat standing in front of a brand new lantern sign, his hand raised to shield his eyes from the sun. He was smiling. He looked to be about 32 years old. He looked happy. That was my grandfather. I had never seen his face before. I stood in front of that photograph a long time. I did not touch the glass. I just looked. He had my hairline. He had my chin. He had a small gap between his front teeth exactly like mine. Sister Marguerite used to tell me to keep my mouth closed when I smiled. I had spent my whole life closing my mouth when I smiled, and here was my grandfather gap-toothed and grinning in front of a diner on Route 9. "Marin." Trevor's voice from the back office. "Come in here, we need to talk." I did not want to go into the back office. I did not want to leave the photograph. But I went. He was sitting behind an old wooden desk with a green blotter. He had a stack of papers in front of him. He gestured to a folding chair on the other side. "Sit down." I sat. I've been talking to a real estate developer for the last 2 weeks, he said. The state is running a new bypass through this area next year. They need this corner, this exact corner. You know what they are offering. He turned a piece of paper toward me. It was a printed offer. There was a number at the bottom, $340,000. I had never in my life seen so many zeros in one place. I had $230 in a savings account Sister Marguerite had helped me open when I was 14. That was all the money I had ever had. $340,000 was not real to me. It was a number in a movie. That is a lot of money, Marin, Trevor said. That is college. That is a car. That is a real start in life. That is the difference between working the cash register at a gas station for the next 10 years and having a future. He slid a pen across the desk toward me. You just need to sign here. As the beneficiary of the estate with me as your guardian, we can accept this offer immediately. I will put the money in a trust for you. You will never have to think about this place again. I looked at the pen. I looked at the paper. And then, for reasons I still cannot fully explain, I looked past him at the wall behind the desk. There was another photograph pinned there. It was smaller than the one out front, and it had faded to yellow with age. It showed my grandfather, older now, maybe in his late 50s, standing in front of the diner with a young woman. She was tall and thin. She had dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was laughing at something outside the frame, and she was pregnant. I could tell she was pregnant because she had her hand on her belly. That protective, unconscious way pregnant women hold themselves. I knew without anyone telling me that I was looking at my mother, and I was looking at me, or the shape of me, before I was born. Marin, Trevor's voice sharpened. Are you listening to me? I looked at him. I want to think about it, I said. His mouth tightened. There is nothing to think about. I want to stay here one night, just one night. Then I will sign it tomorrow. I do not know where those words came from. I had never in my life said no to anyone. Sister Marguerite had raised me to be obedient, to say yes ma'am and no ma'am, and to keep my hands folded in my lap. But something about that photograph on the wall, about that woman laughing with her hand on her belly, made the word come out of my mouth before I could stop it. Trevor stared at me a long moment. Then he stood up. He put both his hands on the desk. He leaned forward. Marin, listen to me carefully. I am your legal guardian. I make the decisions. Do you understand? Yes, sir, ma'am. Tomorrow morning you are going to sign these papers. Tomorrow afternoon we are going to drive to Omaha. Tomorrow night you are going to sleep in a real hotel with a real bed. And then I am going to take you home to my house and you are going to start a normal life. Do you understand? Yes, sir. You want one night. Fine, one night. There is an apartment upstairs. Your grandfather lived in it. Silas has a key. I have to drive back to Omaha for a meeting. I will be back tomorrow at noon. When I get here, you will sign these papers. Are we clear? Yes, sir. He straightened up. He picked up his briefcase. I do not want you talking to anyone in this town. Do you hear me? These people will fill your head with nonsense, especially that old man across the road. He is already looking at you like you owe him something. Stay in the apartment. Do not answer the door. I will see you tomorrow. Then he was gone. I heard his car start. I heard the tires crunch on the gravel. I heard him pull out onto Route 9 and drive away toward Millbrook and the interstate. And I was alone in my grandfather's diner. I sat in his chair behind his desk for a long time. The letter was still in my coat pocket. I had not opened it. I had been afraid to open it in front of Trevor. I had been afraid to open it at all, because I did not know what it was going to say, and I did not know if I could carry whatever it said. But Trevor was gone. I took the envelope out. I turned it over in my hands. My name in blue ink, Marin, written by a man who had known me only in the way that a person can know someone from a distance through a home for girls that would not let him send me the letters he wrote. I opened it slowly. There were 3 pages inside, cream-colored paper, blue ink, the same careful hand. The letter began without a greeting. My dear girl, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you are sitting somewhere in the wreckage of what I left you, and I imagine you are trying to figure out what to do next. I want to help you if I can. I have written this letter 50 times over the last 10 years, and I have thrown away every version except this one, because none of the other versions said what I needed to say. So let me try one more time. I have known about you since the day you were born. Your mother called me from the hospital. She was scared. She was alone. Your father was not in the picture. I told her to come home. She said she could not. She said she was going to work things out on her own. I begged her. I sent money. She used the money for the wrong things. 6 weeks after you were born, she left you at that home in Cleveland. I did not know until she called me 3 months later, high on something in the middle of the night, and told me what she had done. I drove to Cleveland the next morning. I tried to take you home. The state would not let me. Your mother had legally surrendered you. She had checked a box on a form that said you were to be put up for adoption. To reverse that, I would have had to sue the state. I hired a lawyer. I fought for 2 years, and I lost. I lost because I was old and I lived alone, and my wife had been dead for 6 years, and no judge in this country was going to hand a baby girl over to a widower running a diner on a state highway when there were nice couples with houses and pensions waiting to adopt. They did not adopt you. Nobody ever adopted you. I do not know why. I have wondered every day for 16 years why nobody ever adopted you. Perhaps it was a mercy. Perhaps it was because you were meant to find your way back to me eventually. I have to believe that. I paused reading. My hands were shaking. I put the letter down on the desk. I put my face in my hands. I did not cry. I had learned as a small child not to cry. Crying got you nothing. But I could not read the next part yet. I had to sit with the first part for a minute. He had tried to come get me. Nobody had ever told me. Nobody had ever said a single word to me about a grandfather in Nebraska who had driven to Cleveland the day after his daughter left me and had tried to take me home. I picked the letter back up. I wrote to you every year on your birthday. The home would not give you the letters. They told me you were too young to understand. Then they told me the letters would confuse you. Then they told me the letters were creating attachment issues. I kept writing them anyway. I would like you to know that. I would like you to know that on every one of your 16 birthdays somewhere in Nebraska, a man was sitting at this desk writing you a letter. I kept them. I kept every one of them. They are in the bottom drawer of this desk. I would like you to read them someday when you are ready. I do not know if you will ever be ready. That will be up to you. I stopped. I looked down at the bottom drawer of the desk. Slowly I reached down. I pulled the drawer open. The drawer was full of envelopes, cream-colored. Each one had my name on the front. Each one was sealed. There were dozens of them. I counted the ones on top. 16, every year. He had written to me every year. I closed the drawer very carefully the way you close a drawer when you do not want to wake something up. I picked up the letter again. There is one more thing you need to know, and it is the reason I am writing this letter now instead of waiting until you turn 18, which was my original plan. Your Uncle Trevor is not a bad man, but he is a man who has spent his life measuring things in dollars. When he learns that this place is worth something, he will want to sell it. He will tell you it is the smart thing to do. He will tell you that a piece of dirt on a highway is not worth holding on to. He may even be right. But before you sign anything, I need you to know what this place actually is. Not the building, not the dirt. What we did here, what has been done here every night for 41 years. Underneath the pantry floor, near the back wall, there is a section of concrete that is a slightly different shade than the rest. If you look close, you will see a seam. Under the seam is a latch. Under the latch is a box. In the box is everything I could not put in a will and everything I could not fit in this letter. Read what is in the box before you sign anything. That is all I am asking. If after you have read what is in the box, you still want to sell this place, then sell it. I will not haunt you for it. I will love you either way. I have loved you since the day your mother called me from that hospital, and I will love you after I am gone, and nothing you do or do not do will change that. Your grandfather, Walter James Brenner. I sat there in the office with the letter in my lap, and I did not move for a long time. The sun climbed up the wall. It reached the photograph of my mother. It lit her face. I stood up. I walked out of the office. I walked through the kitchen. I opened the pantry door. The pantry was narrow, steel shelving on both sides. Mostly empty except for a few industrial cans of tomatoes and a 50-pound sack of flour that had gone hard as a stone. The floor was poured concrete, gray, unremarkable. I got down on my hands and knees. I ran my palm along the floor at the back wall. And there it was, a section about 2 feet by 3, the concrete a slightly different shade than the rest, edged with a faint seam that a careless eye would never catch. My fingers found the latch tucked against the baseboard. It was painted the same gray as the floor. It was made to disappear. I worked it with my thumbnail. It gave with a small metallic click. A panel of concrete faced steel lifted on a hinge. And underneath it, welded into a steel frame, set into the slab was a box lined with a folded wool blanket, and inside the box were the things my grandfather had hidden from the world for 41 years. I took them out one at a time. 4 cloth-bound ledgers, their spines cracked from decades of opening. A coffee can, an old Folgers can, the lid pressed on tight, heavier than a coffee can should be. A bundle of envelopes, dozens of them, bound with a length of kitchen twine. The paper at the bottom of the stack yellowed almost to brown. A passbook with a pale green cover stamped Hartwell Savings Bank. A manila envelope, thick, sealed. A lawyer's name printed on a label in the corner. And under everything flat against the wall, another envelope, plain white, my name on the front, in the same careful blue ink, Marin. I sat back on my heels on the cold pantry floor. I had 4 ledgers and a passbook and a coffee can and a bundle of letters, and I had another letter with my name on it, and I did not know where to start. I started with the passbook because I understood a passbook. It was a bank account. The account was in Walter Brenner's name. The first deposit was dated 31 years ago, $2. After that, the entries ran down the page and on to the next, and on to the next. A deposit almost every week, never large, sometimes $1, sometimes 3. Once in a while, a 5. Never more than 5. The final entry was made 9 days before he died. The running balance beside it read $41,273. $41,000, saved $1 at a time, over 3 decades. I read the number 3 times to make sure it was real. Then I picked up the coffee can. The lid came off with a soft pop. Inside was folded currency. 1s, 5s, a few 20s, soft from being handled. And on top, a slip of paper in the same blue ink. For the jar. So the next one eats. I did not know what the jar was. I set the can down carefully the way you set down something that might wake up. I opened the manila envelope. Inside was a deed to a property. This exact building. Lot and structure at the corner of Route 9 and Cutter Road. Purchased 11 years ago for $26,500. Cash. The buyer was Walter J. Brenner. I had assumed he rented this place. I had assumed the diner belonged to someone else. He owned it. He had owned it for 11 years. Below the deed clipped to it a smaller deed for the adjacent lot and a handwritten note. Buth held in trust. C. Okafor and Shaw. I did not know what a trust was. Not really. I had heard the word. I picked up the plain white envelope with my name on it. I opened it. There were 2 pages inside. My dear girl, if you are reading this letter, you have found the box, which means you have come out here to Route 9 yourself, which means Trevor has already told you that the developers want this corner, which means you are trying to decide whether to sign or not to sign. I want you to read the ledgers before you decide. The ledgers are the whole story, everything I could not tell you when you were small and could not tell you when you were older because I was not allowed to tell you anything at all. I am telling you now in the only way I know how. Every entry in every ledger is a person. Every person is a night I did not close the door. You will read about a man named Elias Marsh. Read about him first. He is the reason for everything. Then read the rest. Then decide, I love you. I have loved you every day of your life. I am proud of you already, though I have not seen you. I know you are strong. Girls who grow up the way you grew up either die young or grow into something the rest of the world cannot break. I know you are the second one. I know it in my bones. Keep the light on, Marin. That is all I ever figured out that was worth anything, your grandfather. I sat on the pantry floor of a diner in Nebraska with a dead man's letter in my hand, and I understood finally that my life up until that morning had been a small dark room, and someone had just opened a door. I want you to stay with me. I know we have covered a lot of ground already, but if you are sitting there listening to this story and you are feeling something, I want you to do one thing for me. Hit the subscribe button, because the box was just the beginning. What I read in those ledgers over the next 3 days changed everything about who I thought I was. I carried the box out to a booth by the window. Booth 6, the one closest to the door. The vinyl was newer there than the rest, patched and replaced at some point. I did not know yet why my grandfather had made that particular booth the one he tended to. I opened the oldest ledger. The first entry was dated October 9th, 1984, a year after the diner had opened. Kept the light on tonight. A boy came, maybe 17, run off from somewhere, would not say where. Fed him eggs. Let him sleep in the corner booth till the sun came up. Would not take money for the bus, so I left it tucked in his jacket pocket while he slept. Eleanor does not know I do this. She would worry. But I cannot run that road in my head anymore, the one where I send them off. So I keep the light on. I did not know who Eleanor was for a moment. Then I remembered. Silas had said it that morning, my grandmother. Eleanor. I turned the page. October 22nd. Trucker came in around 1 in the morning. Wallet stolen at a stop in Joplin. Fed him. Gave him a thermos for the road. $20 from my pocket. He said he would mail it back. I told him not to bother. Told him to feed the next cold man he found. He cried in the parking lot. I did not know what to do, so I let him. I turned the page. November 2nd. The Dawson girl again. 3 kids in the car. Husband gone to find work in Tulsa and not sending anything. Fed them, packed a box of canned goods and bread, slipped 20 in the diaper bag where she would not find it till later so she would not have to say no. She is too proud to take it from my hand. That is all right. Proud as just hurt, standing up straight. I turned page after page. Each entry was a person. Each entry was a night. Each entry was a small, quiet thing my grandfather had done for a stranger and had told no one about. I read for 2 hours. I did not eat. I did not move. The light from the window shifted from morning yellow to afternoon gold. And somewhere in the third ledger, I found the entry that mattered. November 8th, 1983. This is the reason his hand was different on this page. Heavier, like he had pressed too hard on the pen. A man came to the door tonight around midnight. Older man, maybe 50. His car had broken down 2 miles up the road and he had walked in the dark. He was cold, clear through. He asked me to open up, said he had not eaten in 2 days, said he had a little money if I could just make him something hot. I had already flipped the sign to closed. I had been on my feet since 5 in the morning. I had a delivery coming at 6. I was tired. I told him through the glass we were closed. He nodded like he understood. He said, all right, sir, sorry to bother you. And he walked off down the shoulder of Route 9 into the dark. They found him the next morning 2 miles up the road. He had sat down against a fence post like he was resting. He had frozen to death in the night. His name was Elias Marsh. He was 51 years old. He was on his way to see his brother in Springfield, who did not know he was coming and who never got to see him. I had a stove. I had a roof. I had coffee already made. I sent him out into the cold because I was tired. I have never once in 41 years let that light go out since. I closed the ledger. I put my hands flat on the table. I looked out to the window. A single truck moved slowly toward the horizon, its taillights growing small, then smaller, then gone. Somewhere out there, a man had sat down against a fence post and stopped moving forever. And for 41 years, my grandfather had kept a light burning in a window so that the next Elias Marsh would not walk off into the dark. Whatever you need, that was the chalkboard. That was the sign that said, open late. That was the coffee can that read for the jar. That was the passbook with $41,000 saved $1 at a time. That was what this place was. The bell over the front door gave a single dull note. I looked up. Silas Hodge was standing just inside the doorway, while he had taken his cap off. He was holding it against his chest with both hands the way he had that morning. He looked at the ledgers spread across the table in front of me. He looked at the coffee can. He looked at the open box on the floor behind me. He looked at my face. And Silas Hodge, who had known my grandfather 40 years, sat down slowly in the booth across from me, and he began to cry. He did not sob. He was too old and too proud to sob. He just sat there with his cap in his hands, and the tears ran down the deep lines of his face, and he did not wipe them away. He kept his word to that man, Silas said. His voice was rough. Every night for 41 years, never missed one. And he never told a soul what he was doing. Just fed people, just kept the light on. You knew, I said. I knew some, not all. I do not think anybody knew all of it, but him. He wiped his face then. He looked at me across the booth. Your grandfather saved my life, honey. 22 years ago, I choked on a piece of steak sitting right there at that counter. Second stool from the end. Whole place watching me turn blue. Walter came around that counter faster than I have ever seen a man move. Got his arms under my ribs and brought it up. I was on the floor a full minute getting my breath back. He never made a thing of it. Poured me a fresh coffee and told me to chew next time. He shook his head. After that, I started watching this place. Couldn't help it. And I started to see what he was really doing out here. He told me then. He told me how my grandfather did the dinner rush like any other diner. Regular customers, regular menu. And then after the last regular went home, Walter would flip the sign to close but leave the lamp burning in the window. And that lamp was the signal. The truckers knew it. The drifters knew it. The people at the church knew it without ever saying so. As long as the lamp was on, you could knock on that door at any hour. And Walter would let you in, and he would feed you, and he would ask you nothing. He kept the coffee can on the shelf by the register. The regulars who knew the secret would drop their change in it on the way out, and Walter used that money to feed the ones who could not pay. He took in men just out of jail. He fed them for weeks. Then he would walk them across the road to Silas without a word, and Silas would put them on at the feed store. 2 of those men still worked at the feed store today. For the last 11 years since Walter's hands had started to shake, Silas had been the one keeping the pilot light lit and the pipes from freezing in winter. And this past year since Walter had died, Silas had been coming across the road every single night to light the lamp in the window, because he could not stand to be the man who let Walter's light go out. He told me once, Silas said, the worst part of it wasn't the cooking. It was after. He would feed somebody in trouble at 2 in the morning and watch their taillights go up the road, and the rest of the night he would lie awake wondering if they made it to wherever they were going, because there was not anywhere else for them to go once they left here. He was it, honey, just one tired man and a light in a window. I was crying now. I had not cried in years. I had not cried in front of anyone in longer than that. But I was crying now, quietly sitting across from an old man I had met that morning in the diner. My grandfather had left me and I could not stop. Silas reached across the table. He took my hand in both of his hands. His hands were rough. His palms were warm. Your grandfather loved you, honey, he said, every day, every single day. He used to sit right there at that counter and drink his coffee and stare at the door like he was waiting for you to walk through it. He never gave up on you. He never gave up hoping he would see you before he died. He didn't. No, he didn't. That is a sorrow. I will not pretend it isn't. But he knew you would come eventually. He told me so about 100 times. He said, Silas, that girl is going to walk in that door someday, and when she does, I want you to make sure she knows who her people are. He squeezed my hand. You are Walter Brenner's granddaughter. You are Eleanor Brenner's granddaughter. Your grandmother was the finest woman this county ever produced. And your grandfather kept a light burning in this window for 41 years so that nobody had to die alone on the side of the road. That is who your people are, Marin. That is where you come from. I could not speak. He let go of my hand. He wiped his face again with the back of his sleeve. Now, he said, you have got about 18 hours before that uncle of yours comes back. And I have a feeling he does not want you knowing any of what you just found out, so we have got some work to do. Have you ever met a stranger who felt like family the moment you saw them? Because that was Silas. And I want you to hold on to that feeling, because in a few hours, my Uncle Trevor was going to come back to this diner, and he was going to try to take all of this away from me. And what happened next was the part of this story I have been waiting the whole time to tell you. Silas made me a sandwich. He walked over to the diner's kitchen, and he opened the refrigerator, and he found bread and cheese and a tomato, and he made me a grilled cheese on the flat-top griddle, the way my grandfather had made them for 41 years. He said, watch me. He said, your grandpa cut them on the diagonal, always the diagonal. He said, corner to corner is the only way. I ate the sandwich at the counter while Silas made himself a cup of coffee from a percolator that must have been 40 years old. The sandwich was the best thing I had ever eaten. I do not know if it was actually the best sandwich in the world, or if it was the first meal I had eaten in the place my grandfather had built with his hands. I do not know if there is a difference between those two things. I ate the whole sandwich and I did not say a word. While I ate, Silas told me about my grandmother. Her name was Eleanor Brenner. She had been the third-grade teacher at Millbrook Elementary for 26 years. She had taught almost every adult in that town how to read. She had died of a stroke 16 years ago in the kitchen of the house she and Walter had built together on Cutter Road. Walter had found her when he came home for lunch. She had been 61 years old. I was never the same after that, Silas said. For a while, I thought we were going to lose him too. He just stopped. Sat in that corner booth every day for 6 months and stared out the window. I brought him food. He would not eat it. Then one morning he got up and went into the kitchen and started cooking. And he kept the light on that night and every night after. I do not know if he was cooking for the strangers or for himself, maybe both. He looked at me. He hoped, honey, that is the thing I want you to know. Even after Eleanor died, even after your mama took off, he hoped, every day of his life. He hoped he would see you. He hoped your mother would come home. He hoped somebody would walk through that door and need what he had to give. And they always did. Every single night, somebody did. I finished the sandwich. I wiped my hands on a paper napkin. Silas, I said, Trevor is coming back tomorrow. He wants me to sign the property over. He is going to sell it to the developer for $340,000. Silas was quiet a moment. How do you feel about that? He said. I do not know. That is a lot of money for a girl in your situation. I know, but I did not have words for the but. I had only 3 hours of ledgers and 1 letter and 1 grilled cheese sandwich and a passbook that showed a lifetime of dollar deposits. I had no words for the but it was there. Silas nodded slowly. Well, he said, I do not think you should sign anything until you understand what you would be selling And I do not think 3 hours of reading is enough to understand it. So how about this? You stay here tonight, read what you can. I will come back in the morning early. And then when your uncle comes at noon, you will have made a decision. And whatever the decision is, you will have made it with your eyes open. He said I shouldn't talk to anyone in town. Silas smiled a small, tired smile. He would say that, well, I am not just anyone, and there is someone else you need to meet before you decide anything. He stood up. He put his cap back on. He walked to the door. Then he stopped and turned around. You need anything tonight, honey? You flip that light in the window off and then back on. I sleep in the back of the feed store. I will see it. I will come right over. Then he was gone. I locked the door behind him. The afternoon had turned to evening. The sky over Route 9 had gone pink and then purple, and then the deep gray of a Nebraska nightfall. I walked around the diner turning on lamps. I did not turn on the overhead lights. I lit the small lamp in the front window. Then I went back to booth 6 and I opened the second ledger. I read until my eyes could not focus anymore. I read about a woman named Kathy Doss who had come in with 3 children in February of 1991. Her husband gone off to Tulsa, no money for food. My grandfather had fed them for the entire winter. When Kathy Doss's oldest daughter graduated from high school 4 years later, my grandfather had put an envelope with $200 in it on their kitchen table. Anonymous. Kathy Doss had known who it was from. She had come to the diner the next morning and had hugged him for a full minute and had not said a word. I read about a man named Roy Hendricks, just out of Lincoln Correctional after 18 months for a bar fight whom nobody in town would hire. My grandfather had fed him every morning for 2 months and then had quietly walked him across the road to Silas, who had put him on at the feed store. Roy Hendricks had worked at the feed store for 22 years now and had a wife and 2 grown sons and had never once touched another drink. I read about a family named Peterson who had lost their farmhouse in a spring fire in 1997. They had eaten every meal at the diner for 3 weeks. Walter had told them their money was no good. When they tried to pay him later after they had rebuilt, he had turned them down flat. Take it up the road, he had said. Feed the next one. I read for hours. The lamp in the window kept burning. Somewhere around midnight, I climbed the narrow staircase behind the kitchen, and I found the apartment my grandfather had lived in. 1 room, a single bed made up with clean sheets, a small kitchen, a window that looked out at the road. Someone had left a lamp burning in that window too. That was Silas. Silas had been coming up here every night to light this lamp too, in case a stranger driving past on Route 9 in the middle of the night needed to see that someone was awake up there. I lay down on the bed in my clothes. I did not sleep for a long time. I listened to the trucks passing outside. I watched the square of yellow light reflected on the ceiling from the lamp in the window. I thought about my grandfather sleeping in this same room for the last 11 years of his life, listening to the same trucks, watching the same light. I thought about my mother. Somewhere out there, my mother was still alive. She had left me. She had lived long enough to come back for me and had not come. My grandfather had written to me every year and had never been allowed to see me. Trevor had known where I was for 16 years and had never come. My mother, whoever she was, had known where I was for 16 years and had never come. But my grandfather had left me a diner and a passbook and a coffee can and a story about a man named Elias Marsh. My grandfather had left me a light burning in a window on the loneliest highway I had ever seen. I fell asleep sometime after 2 in the morning. I dreamed about a woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, laughing at something outside the frame, her hand on her belly. Silas came at 7 with 2 women and a boy. He knocked softly and let himself in with a key. I was already awake. I had been sitting at the counter reading the 4th ledger for an hour. I had a cup of coffee I had made myself in a percolator I had never used before. The coffee was too strong. I drank it anyway. The first woman was maybe 72, silver-haired, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. And she stood in the doorway of the diner for a long moment and put her hand to her mouth and looked at the room like she was seeing a ghost. I have been wondering, as she said, which one of you would show up. I hoped it would be you. She crossed the room. She took my face in both of her hands. Her hands were soft and cool and smelled like flour. I knew you when you were an idea, she said. I knew you when your mother was pregnant with you. You have your grandmother's mouth and your grandfather's eyes. I would have known you anywhere. Her name was Ruthie Vance. She had waited tables at the Lantern for 31 years. She now ran the kitchen at the Methodist Church in Millbrook. She sat down across from me at the counter and she began to tell me things. She told me she had known about the light. She had known from the beginning. My grandfather would say, "Leave the light on tonight, Ruthie. and she would know what it meant. She would stay late and cook alongside him for whoever came knocking. They had fed a woman in labor once right there in booth 6 while they waited for an ambulance that was 40 minutes out. They had fed a young man in a suit and tie who had lost his job and could not go home and tell his wife. They had fed a runaway girl of about 13 who had come in walking barefoot in the snow. Your grandfather used to say he wasn't running a charity, Ruthie said. He hated that word. He said he was just running a diner that happened to never close all the way. He said a charity makes a person feel small for needing it. And the whole point was that nobody who walked in here ever had to feel small. They just had to be hungry. And everybody is hungry sometimes. The boy Silas had brought was his grandson. His name was Jesse Hodge. He was 19. He was tall and lean and quiet with paint on his boots and a way of standing in a doorway as if he was not sure he was allowed in. Jesse did not say much at first. He read the chalkboard. He looked at the framed photograph by the door. He looked at the coffee can on the shelf by the register. Silas had told him what the can was for. He put a folded $5 bill in it before he sat down. The second woman was in her 40s. Thin, tired eyes. She was carrying a small girl on her hip. The little girl had wet cheeks and a runny nose, and she was clutching a stuffed rabbit that had been mended so many times it was mostly thread. "Is this the place?" the woman said. "I heard about it at the gas station in town. They said you do not turn people away." I looked at Ruthie. Ruthie stood up. "Come on in, honey," she said. "Sit anywhere. Booth 6 is the best one. How long since your daughter has eaten?" "Last night." "Well then, let's fix that." Ruthie walked into the kitchen like she had never left it. She put an apron on. She turned on the flat top. She cracked eggs into a bowl. I stood in the middle of the dining room with a ledger in my hand, and I watched a diner that had been closed for a year start up again in front of my eyes. Silas caught my eye across the room. "This is what he built, honey," he said quietly. "This is what your uncle wants to sell." I looked at the woman in booth 6. She was helping her daughter out of her wet coat. The little girl was sniffling. The woman looked exhausted. She looked like she had been driving all night with nowhere to drive to. She looked like a woman one bad day away from losing everything. I looked at the chalkboard. "Today, pot roast, cornbread, and whatever you need." Ruthie brought the woman a coffee. She brought the little girl a glass of milk in a small chipped glass that looked like it had been used 1,000 times. The little girl drank the milk in one long swallow and looked up with a white mustache on her lip. Her mother laughed. It was a small laugh, but it was a laugh. It was the first sound of anything like happiness I had heard from her arm. At 11:30, a black car pulled into the gravel lot. I saw it through the window. Trevor was back. "I want you to stay right here with me. Do not go anywhere. What happens next is why I am telling you this story. But before I keep going, I want you to hit that subscribe button, because if this story is meaning something to you, there are more stories like it waiting for you. Now come back with me." Trevor is walking up to the door, and I am about to do something I did not know I was capable of doing. The door swung open. Trevor came in. He stopped just inside. He looked at the dining room. He looked at Ruthie behind the counter. He looked at Silas sitting at the counter with a coffee. He looked at Jesse standing by the door. He looked at the woman and her daughter in booth 6 eating scrambled eggs. He looked at me standing in the middle of the room with a ledger in my hand. His face went very still. "What is going on here?" he said. Silas stood up slowly. He put his cap on the counter. He turned to face Trevor. "Morning, Trevor," he said. "I told you to stay away from her." "I know you did. Get out." Silas did not move. Trevor looked at me. "Marin, in the office, now." I did not move either. I said now. "I'm not going to sign it," I said. The room went quiet. Even the little girl in the booth stopped chewing. Trevor took a slow breath. He pinched the bridge of his nose. When he opened his eyes, he was looking at me the way a man looks at a piece of machinery that is broken in a way that will cost him money. "Marin," he said. His voice was careful, slow. "You do not know what you are doing. You are 16 years old. You are a girl who has spent her entire life in an institution. You do not understand money. You do not understand real estate. You do not understand what a piece of property like this is worth or is not worth. You need to trust me on this." "He wrote me letters." Trevor stopped. "What?" "Grandpa Walter. He wrote me a letter every year on my birthday. For 16 years. The home would not give them to me. They are in a desk drawer. I have not read them yet. But he wrote them." Trevor's mouth tightened. "Marin. He tried to adopt me. When Mom left me, he drove to Cleveland. He hired a lawyer. He fought for 2 years. He lost. The state would not let him have me. Did you know that?" Trevor did not answer. "You knew," I said. Something moved across his face, something small, something he did not want me to see. He looked away. I did what I thought was right at the time. You knew he wanted me, and you did not tell me. He was an old man alone on a highway. What kind of life was that for a child? You would have grown up in a diner. You would have grown up in the middle of nowhere. You would have grown up with nothing. I grew up with nothing anyway. That landed harder than I meant it to. Trevor's face went pale. Ruthie set down the pan she was holding. Silas turned his head. The woman in booth 6 looked up. Trevor took a step toward me. Marin, listen to me. Whatever your grandfather told you in that letter, whatever these people are telling you, it is not going to feed you. It is not going to put a roof over your head. It is not going to send you to college. $340,000 is going to do all of those things. I am your legal guardian. I am the one who has to think about your future. Then why are you selling it so fast? Because the offer is not going to last. That is what people who are cheating you say. I do not know where that sentence came from. It came from a book I had read at St. Catherine's. It came from Sister Marguerite. It came from somewhere. It came out of my mouth before I could stop it. Trevor's face changed. The careful, patient uncle disappeared. What was left was a man who was cornered and who did not like being cornered. You listen to me, he said, and his voice was very low. I have been dealing with this developer for 2 weeks. I have negotiated in good faith. I have not been paid a single cent yet. I have driven 11 hours to come get you. I have brought you to your inheritance. I have offered to put every penny of this sale into a trust for your future. And you are standing here, 16 years old, in a broken-down diner in the middle of nowhere telling me I am cheating you. Do you understand how ungrateful you sound right now? Trevor, Silas said quietly. Trevor turned on him. You shut your mouth. This is a family matter. That girl is my family too, Silas said, whether you like it or not. She is my niece, not yours. She is Walter Brenner's granddaughter, and Walter Brenner was my brother. Not by blood, but he was my brother, and this diner was his life's work. And you are trying to sell it out from under a 16-year-old girl before she even understands what she is holding. That is what you are doing. The room was very quiet. Trevor stared at Silas. Then he looked at me. Marin, get in the car. Now, we are leaving. We will finish this at my house in Omaha with an attorney. No. Excuse me. I said no. I am not leaving. I am staying here until I finish reading these ledgers, until I know what I am doing. You do not have a choice. I am your legal guardian. You will do what I tell you to do. Then take her to court. Everyone turned. It was Ruthie who had spoken. She had stepped out from behind the counter. She had taken off her apron. She was looking at Trevor over the tops of her reading glasses, like a woman looking at a boy who had misbehaved at Sunday school. You want to force that girl into a car and drive her 11 hours to Omaha against her will, Ruthie said. You do that, and I will call the sheriff of Millbrook County, who I have known since he was 6 years old, and I will file a report. And then I will call Walter's attorney, Mrs. Okafor in Lincoln, and she will file a petition in probate court. And you will spend the next 3 months in a courtroom explaining to a judge why you were in such a hurry to sell a piece of property that a 16-year-old girl inherited. She looked at him steadily. Or you can go home to Omaha, and you can come back next week, and we will all sit down together, and Marin will make her decision with her eyes open. Your choice. Trevor looked around the room. Silas, Jesse, the woman in booth 6, the little girl, me. He was outnumbered. He was outnumbered by strangers. Something in his face collapsed, just for a second. Then he pulled it back together. Fine, he said. He looked at me. You want to play this game, Marin? Fine, you have until Friday. I will be back on Friday morning with my attorney and a probate judge if I have to bring one. And you will explain to that judge why you are refusing to accept a legitimate offer that is in your best interest. Do you understand me, Yes, sir. He turned around and walked out of the diner. The bell over the door gave its dull note. The black car started up in the parking lot. The tires crunched on the gravel. He drove away toward Millbrook in the interstate. The dining room let out a breath. Ruthie put her hand on my shoulder. Silas walked over slowly. He looked at me a long moment. Well, he said, you have got until Friday. Have you ever stood up to someone you were afraid of? Someone with power over you because I had never done it before. Not once in my life. And I want you to comment down below and tell me about a time you stood up for yourself. I read every comment, I really do. Now let's keep going, because we had 4 days, and I had a lot of ledgers left to read. The town found out by lunchtime. I do not know how. I did not tell anyone. Ruthie must have called someone. Silas must have talked. It does not matter. By noon, cars were pulling into the gravel lot. Pickup trucks mostly, old ones. Farm trucks with hay bales in the beds and mud on the tires. Also a green minivan and a red Cadillac from about 1985, and one bright yellow school bus that had been retired from the district and was now used by a Methodist ladies' auxiliary. People walked up to the door and Ruthie let them in. They did not come to eat. They came to see me. The first was a woman in her 30s holding a teenage boy by the hand. He was almost as tall as she was. He was bored and embarrassed to be there, and he stood behind his mother looking at his shoes. His mother did not look at him. She looked at me. I heard, she said. I had to come. She told me. 12 years ago, she had been 19 and pregnant, and her water had broken on Route 9 in an ice storm with the hospital 40 minutes out and her car in a ditch. She had seen the lamp in the diner window and had walked the last quarter mile holding her belly. My grandfather and Ruthie had laid her down in booth 6 and had delivered her son onto a stack of clean tablecloths and had kept them both warm and alive until the ambulance came. The boy was healthy and tall and bored, 12 years old, named after my grandfather. His name was Walter Patrick Rooney. Your grandfather was the first 10 minutes, his mother said. Your grandfather was the first 10 minutes of my son's life. She could not say any more. She began to cry. The boy looked up, his face changed. He put his arm around his mother's shoulders. He was suddenly not a bored kid anymore. He was suddenly a boy who understood in a way he had never quite understood before that he had almost not been born. After her came an old man in a plaid coat. His name was Harold Vance. He was Ruthie's brother. His wife had died 6 years ago, and my grandfather had let him sit in this diner every Tuesday for 2 years. No charge, just coffee and toast, just a reason to put his pants on and leave the house. After Harold came a man about my grandfather's age. He did not give his name. He sat down at the counter with his hat in his lap, and he looked at me, and he said, 11 years ago, I was driving to the county bluff to end my life. I stopped here because the light was on, and I did not want to die hungry. Your grandfather talked to me about absolutely nothing for 2 hours. I have been married 8 years now. I have 2 daughters. He never knew what he did. He put a folded $20 bill in the coffee can. He walked out. After him came a woman named Margaret, retired third-grade teacher. She had been my grandmother's colleague. She was almost apologetic. She said she did not have a dramatic story. She said she had only been a widow with a small pension and a long winter, and my grandfather had noticed the way she had started ordering just coffee and a side of toast and calling it lunch. She said that after that, her plate had always come out fuller than she had ordered. An egg she had not asked for, a second piece of pie wrapped to go that she had not paid for. When she had tried to correct the bill, he had waved her off and said the cook made a mistake, take it, you would be doing him a favor. He let me keep my dignity while he fed me, Margaret said. That is the rarest kindness there is. Anybody can give a person food. Almost nobody can do it without making them feel poor. She put a folded 20 in the coffee can on her way out. She said she had been doing it for years. She said she and my grandfather had had a quiet agreement about it. They kept coming for hours. I stood in the dining room of my grandfather's diner and I listened to the story of his life, told back to me in fragments by the town he had lived in for 41 years. I heard about kindnesses I could not have imagined. I heard about a man who had never once turned a person away. I heard about a grandfather who had loved me before I was born. I did not cry. I had run out of the ability to cry. I just listened. Around 3 in the afternoon, when the rush had slowed, Ruthie sat down beside me at the counter. She poured me a cup of coffee. She said nothing for a long moment. Then she said, honey, your uncle is going to bring in an attorney on Friday. I know. You are going to need one too. I do not have any money. You have a passbook with $41,000 in it, and a coffee can with about $900 in it, and a diner that just fed 3 families for free this morning without you having to lift a finger. I looked at her. There is a woman in Lincoln named Adeze Okafor, Ruthie said. Your grandfather's attorney. She set up the trust. She was there when he signed his will. If you call her right now, she can be here tomorrow, and she is not going to let your uncle push you around. How do you know? Because I have known her since she was 6 years old, too. She used to sit at that counter and eat pancakes on Sunday mornings while her father, God rest him, drank coffee with your grandfather. She has been waiting for this call since the day Walter died. I made the call. Mrs. Okafor answered on the second ring. I told her who I was. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said in a voice that was calm and very warm, Marin, I have been hoping you would call. I have things to tell you. Can you be at my office in Lincoln tomorrow morning at 9? Silas drove me to Lincoln at 6 in the morning. The drive took 2 hours. We did not talk much. The sun came up over the plains. The sky went from black to pink to the pale blue of a Nebraska spring morning. I watched the fields roll past. I thought about how much land there was in this country. I thought about how small I had felt at St. Catherine's cooped up in a brick building in Cleveland, and how strangely large I felt now driving through miles of empty fields with an old man I had known for less than a day. Mrs. Okafor's office was on the second floor of a brick building on a quiet street. She met us at the door herself. She was a tall woman, maybe 50, with graying hair pulled back in a bun. She wore a dark blue suit. She had steady, kind eyes. When she saw me, she stopped, and she looked at me for a long moment, and something soft passed across her face. "You look just like her," she said. "Like who?" "Like your grandmother." She led us into her office. She had files ready on the desk, boxes of them. "Your grandfather," she said, "came to my father 8 years ago and set up an irrevocable trust. When my father passed, I took over the account. The property, both parcels and all associated funds, are held in this trust. You are the sole beneficiary, but you are also the sole trustee." "What does that mean?" "It means the property is yours, but it is held for one purpose only, and that purpose is written into the trust document. Do you know what that purpose is?" And no. She turned the folder toward me. She turned to a page in the middle. She tapped a paragraph with her pen. I read it. "The purpose of this trust is to maintain the property known as the Lantern on Route 9 as a place where any person in need of a meal may receive one, without cost, without question, and without judgment, in perpetuity." I looked up. "In perpetuity," Mrs. Okafor said. "Forever." He chose that word himself. He wanted it to outlive all of us. The trust cannot be sold. It cannot be dissolved. It cannot be redirected to any other purpose. And it was drafted from the start to withstand exactly the kind of challenge your uncle is going to bring on Friday. He is going to challenge it. He is going to argue that your grandfather was not of sound mind when he wrote it, that the hidden accounts in the secret ledgers proved diminished capacity. He is going to argue that the property should be released from the trust and distributed to the family. To him. Yes, to him. I sat back in the chair. Mrs. Okafor watched me carefully. "Marin, your grandfather anticipated this. He told my father on the day he set up the trust that a son-in-law who measured everything in dollars would come along eventually. He wanted the door bolted before that day arrived. So he did three things. First, he had himself evaluated by a physician every year for the last 8 years. His medical records are in this file. He was of sound mind at every evaluation, including the one 3 weeks before he died." She turned a page. "Second, he documented every act of charity, in writing, in the ledgers, so that if anyone ever claimed the property was hidden from his family, we could produce 41 years of evidence that the property had a specific charitable purpose, understood and witnessed by the entire community." She turned another page. "Third, he left a letter in the file, to be read aloud in court if anyone ever tried to break the trust. Would you like to hear it now?" "Yes." She unfolded a piece of paper. She read it aloud. "To whomever it may concern, my name is Walter James Brenner. I am 71 years old. I am of sound mind and of sound body, though my hands shake and my knees are stiff, and I cannot climb the ladder anymore. I have lived a good life. I have loved one woman my whole life, and I have raised one daughter, and I have run a diner on Route 9 for 41 years, and I have hidden very little from anyone. I hid three things. I hid the fact that I kept a light burning in the window every night for the strangers who might come. I hid that from my wife because I did not want her to worry, and I hid it from my daughter because she was a child, and I hid it from my son-in-law because he would have laughed at me. I hid the fact that I saved $1 at a time in a passbook account for over 30 years because I did not want my daughter to know until she came home, if she came home. And she did not come home. So the money is for my granddaughter now if she ever comes. And I hid the deed to my own property because I bought it late in life with money I saved from feeding strangers. And I did not want anyone to know because it would have shamed the ones who had put their change in the coffee can to know how much of their kindness had added up. None of these three things are the acts of a man who has lost his mind. They are the acts of a man who was trying to protect the small good thing he had built from the world that would not have understood it. If anyone reads this in a courtroom, I want them to know one thing. I love my granddaughter every day of her life. I never met her. But I loved her, and what I have left her is not a piece of dirt on a highway. It is a promise. It is a lamp in a window. It is a coffee can that says, feed the next one. Do not let anyone take it from her. Signed, Walter James Brenner. February the 3rd, 2 years ago. Mrs. Okafor folded the paper. The room was very quiet. Silas was looking at the floor. His shoulders were shaking. I looked at the letter on her desk. He wrote that 2 years ago, I said. Yes. He knew. 2 years ago. He knew Trevor would try. He knew. I sat there in the chair and I understood in a way I had not understood before that my grandfather had been fighting for me long before I knew he existed. He had been fighting for me in courtrooms in Cleveland. He had been fighting for me at the desk in the back office. He had been fighting for me in this attorney's office 2 years before he died, planning for a fight he would not live to see. He had known Trevor would come. He had known I would be alone when he did. He had made sure that when the fight came, I would not be alone. Mrs. Okafor, I said, what do I need to do? She smiled a small, tired smile. You need to stay in the diner. You need to keep the light on. And you need to be in court on Friday morning at 10. I will drive to Millbrook Thursday night. We will spend the evening preparing. Silas and Ruthie and I will handle the witnesses. And you and Marin need only tell the truth about what you found in that box and what it has meant to you. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. Good, then let's go home. We drove back to Millbrook in the late morning. I want you to stay with me for what comes next. I know we have been together a long time already. Take a stretch. Take a sip of your tea. Because Friday morning is coming, and what happened in that courtroom is the reason I still keep the light on to this day. The next 3 days were the busiest of my life. The town found out about the court hearing. I still do not know how. I never told anyone. Silas said in Millbrook a piece of news traveled faster than a truck on Route 9, and I believed him. By Thursday afternoon, the diner was full of people. Not to eat, to help. Ruthie had organized what she called a witness list. She had a legal pad, and she had names, and she had times. Mrs. Okafor arrived at 4 in the afternoon in a small silver car with a briefcase and 2 boxes of documents. She sat down in booth 6 and interviewed people one by one for the rest of the evening. The mother with the 12-year-old boy came back. The old man from the counter came back. Margaret, the school teacher, came back. The man from the bluff came back, and this time he brought his wife. Roy Hendricks from the feed store came in with his lunch pail and sat in booth 6 and told Mrs. Okafor about the 18 months at Lincoln Correctional and about the 2 months of breakfasts and about the day my grandfather had walked him across the road to Silas. He was 53 years old. He was crying at the end of it. He said, I would not have my life without your grandfather. And he meant it exactly. Mrs. Okafor wrote it all down. She would look up sometimes and meet my eye and smile a small smile. Once she said quietly, so only I could hear, your uncle has no idea what he is walking into. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in booth 6 with Ruthie and Silas and Mrs. Okafor. Ruthie had made a pot of chicken and dumplings. We ate it out of chipped white bowls with big spoons. It was the best meal I had ever had. Ruthie said it was Eleanor's recipe. She said my grandmother had made it for the Methodist church supper every second Sunday for 26 years and had never once written the recipe down. She said she had learned it by standing in Eleanor's kitchen and watching her make it 50 times. I ate 2 bowls. I thought about my grandmother. I thought for the first time in my life that I had grown up hungry. Not for food. Sister Marguerite had always fed us, hungry in a different way, hungry for a woman in a kitchen, hungry for a recipe passed down, hungry for someone to say this is how your grandmother did it, and this is how you will do it too. I asked Ruthie if she would teach me. She put down her spoon. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and she took my hand. Oh, honey, she said. It would be my honor. Friday morning was cold and clear. Mrs. Okafor drove me to the county courthouse in Millbrook. Silas followed in his truck. Ruthie followed in her old Cadillac. Behind Ruthie, a caravan of pickup trucks and minivans and 1 yellow school bus. The courthouse was a small brick building on the town square. The courtroom was on the 2nd floor. It had 2 long tables at the front and 6 rows of chairs behind them. When we walked in, the chairs were already full. People had come at 8 in the morning to get seats. When there were no more seats, they had stood along the walls. When the walls were full, they had stood in the hallway. The judge, when he arrived, had to push through the crowd to get to the bench. Trevor sat at the table on the right. He had brought his attorney, a younger man in a nicer suit than his. Renee, Trevor's wife, sat behind him in a coat. She kept looking at the crowd and looking at her watch. Trevor did not look at me. I sat at the table on the left with Mrs. Okafor. She squeezed my hand once under the table. Then she stood up when the judge called the case. Trevor's attorney went first. He was smooth. He talked about hidden accounts. He talked about secret ledgers. He talked about a pattern of concealment inconsistent with sound mental capacity. He said his client was seeking only to protect the legitimate interests of the family and to ensure that a 16-year-old minor was not being pressured into decisions she could not understand. He was smooth and he was good. He talked for 20 minutes. When he sat down, Mrs. Okafor stood up. She began with the medical records. She entered them one by one. 8 years of annual physicals, 8 years of mental competency evaluations. She read excerpts aloud. Alert, oriented, fully competent. The final evaluation 3 weeks before my grandfather died had been conducted by his family doctor of 30 years. The doctor had written in a hand I could see on the screen behind her, "This man is sharper than most 50-year-olds I know." Then she entered the work orders, 11 years of work orders. Every service call Silas had made to the diner. Everyone signed and dated by my grandfather in a clean, sharp hand. Then she entered the ledgers. She held them up, all four of them. She said, "These are not the records of a man hiding assets. These are the records of a man documenting acts of charity." She said 41 years of documented charity corroborated by the sworn testimony of the recipients. Then she called the witnesses. The mother went first. She stood up and she walked to the front of the room. She held the microphone in both hands. She looked at Trevor when she spoke. She said, "12 years ago, I was 19 years old and I was in a ditch on Route 9 in an ice storm with my water broken. Walter Brenner and Ruthie Vance delivered my son in booth 6 of that diner. My son is 12 years old. His name is Walter Patrick Rooney. He is named after a man who was in his right mind." She sat down. Harold Vance stood up next. He said, "For 2 years after my wife died, Walter Brenner gave me a reason to leave the house. I do not know if I would be alive today without those Tuesday mornings. That was a sane man. The wrong was all in me, and he fixed it a cup of coffee at a time." He sat down. The man from the bluff stood up. His hands were shaking. His wife stood up with him and held his arm. He said, "I do not know how to say this in a courtroom. 11 years ago, I was driving to the county bluff to kill myself. I stopped at the Lantern because the light was on and I did not want to die hungry. Walter Brenner talked to me about the weather for 2 hours. He did not know what he was doing. He saved my life. That is a sane man. My wife and my 2 daughters are here today because of Walter Brenner. Do not tell me he was not in his right mind." He sat down. His wife wiped his face with a tissue. Margaret stood up. Roy Hendricks stood up. Ruthie stood up. A woman I had not met stood up and told a story about a Thanksgiving dinner in 1989 when her husband had been in the hospital and she had had 4 children, under 7, and no money. Walter had shown up at her front door with a full turkey dinner in a cardboard box and had left it on the porch and had walked away without knocking. Silas stood, but Silas told the story of choking on the steak. Silas told the story of the 11 years of pilot lights and pipes. Silas said, "That man was my brother. I do not have a brother by blood. Walter Brenner was my brother, and he was in his right mind every day I knew him. Every single day. 10 people, then 15, then 20. At some point, I stopped counting. The whole room was standing up and sitting down. The judge, who was a lean, tall man in his 60s, was leaning forward on his elbows listening. Trevor stopped, looking at his attorney. He started looking down at the table in front of him. He did not look up when a woman I did not know stood up and said my grandfather had paid for her son's high school graduation cap and gown in 1992. He did not look up when an old man in overalls stood up and said my grandfather had loaned him $300 in 1987 and had never once asked for it back. Mrs. Okafor let them all speak. Then when there was a pause, she stood up one more time. "Your Honor," she said, "I have one more witness. He drove 8 hours to be here today. His name is Daniel Marsh." The room went quiet. A man in the back stood up. He was in his early 40s. He wore a suit that did not quite fit him. He walked to the front slowly. He looked nervous. He looked like a man who had never been in a courtroom before. He took the microphone. "My name is Daniel Marsh," he said. "I am 41 years old. I live in Springfield, Missouri. I teach high school history. My father's name was Elias Marsh." The judge lifted his eyes. Trevor lifted his eyes. I sat very still. "My father died on Route 9 in November of 1983. He was on his way to visit my uncle. He was 51 years old. I was 8. Daniel Marsh took a breath. "When I was 9, an envelope of cash showed up in our mailbox with a note that said, 'For the boys' school.' $50. My mother thought it was from my uncle. My uncle thought it was from my grandmother. My grandmother thought it was from the church. None of them had sent it. The next year, another envelope. And every year after that, all through my school years, all through my college years, someone paid my tuition at the state college, anonymously, through a trust. My mother is still alive. She still does not know who did it." He looked out at the crowd. "3 months ago, my mother found a letter in some old boxes she was cleaning out. It was addressed to me, not sent, written in 1983, a week after my father died. It said, 'Dear son, I know we have never met. Your father came to my diner one night and I did not let him in. He died because of that. I cannot bring your father back, but I can help you become the man he wanted you to be. Signed Walter James Brenner, Route 9, Millbrook, Nebraska. The courtroom was completely silent. For 37 years, Daniel Marsh said, Walter Brenner paid for my education. He paid for my college. He put money in a trust that paid for my sister's college too. He never told anyone. He never asked for a thank you. He never spoke to me in his life. He did all of it because one cold night in 1983, he made a mistake that he refused to stop paying for. Daniel Marsh looked at Trevor. That is not a man who lost his mind. That is a man who spent 41 years earning back one moment. And he did it. He earned it back. Twice over. And nobody, not you, not anyone gets to say he was crazy. He sat down. Trevor did not lift his head. The judge did not speak for a long moment. Then he cleared his throat. I have heard enough, he said. I have heard more than enough. The petition to invalidate the trust is dismissed. The property remains in trust for its stated purpose. Miss Brenner is the trustee. Court is adjourned. He hit the gavel. The room let out a breath. People started to stand up. Silas turned and put his arm around me. Ruthie was crying. Mrs. Okafor was gathering her papers with the small smile of a woman who had known the whole time how this was going to end. Trevor stood up. He did not look at his attorney. He did not look at Renee. He walked past his own table toward the door. He had to pass down the aisle where I sat. When he came even with me, he stopped. He did not look at me. He looked at the floor. He stood there for maybe 5 seconds. Then he said very quietly, I did not know he wrote the letters. Then he walked out. Renee walked out after him. I did not see either of them again for a long time. I want you to stay with me just a little longer because the story does not end in the courtroom. What happened that afternoon and what happened the next week is what I want you to hear most. If you have made it this far, please subscribe. This part matters. That afternoon after the courthouse, after everyone had gone home, after Ruthie had made me a bowl of soup I could not eat, I went into the back office. I opened the bottom drawer of the desk. 16 envelopes, cream-colored, each one with my name on the front. I took them out. I laid them on the desk in order. The oldest one first. The paper had yellowed almost to brown. The newest one last. The paper still white. I opened the oldest one. Dear Marin, you are 4 years old today. I do not know what a 4-year-old girl likes. I have been thinking about it all week. Your grandmother would have known. She knew things like that. I am guessing you like animals. Most children like animals. There is a barn cat that lives behind the diner. Her name is Marmalade. She had 4 kittens this spring. I will save one for you in case you ever come. I do not know if the letter will reach you. Sister Marguerite said she would try. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Love your grandfather. I opened the next one. Dear Marin, you are 5. Marmalade's kitten grew up. She lives in the diner now. Her name is Butter. She sleeps on the counter and Ruthie chases her off and she comes right back. I think you would like her. I hope you are eating well. I hope somebody reads to you at night. Love your grandfather. I opened the next one, and the next, and the next. He wrote about the diner. He wrote about the weather. He wrote about Silas across the road and Ruthie in the kitchen. He wrote about a cardinal that nested in the tree behind the apartment window 3 springs in a row. He wrote about my grandmother once. Just once. He said your grandmother would have taught you how to bake bread. She had hands like yours. She had a way of pinching the top of a loaf that nobody I have ever met has been able to copy. I think about her every day. He never once complained. He never once said it is not fair that I cannot see you. He never once told me that Sister Marguerite would not give him my address. He only wrote about small things, about what was happening in his life, about what he thought I might like to know. He wrote as if he was talking to a girl he saw every week. He wrote as if I was already there. I read all 16 letters that afternoon. It took me until the sky went dark. When I finished, I put them back in the drawer in order. I did not cry. I was past crying. I sat at the desk in the office and I understood something I had not understood before. He had not been waiting for me to come. He had been keeping me company from a distance for 16 years. He had been sitting at this desk every year writing to a granddaughter he could not see, keeping her present in his life, the only way the world would let him. I had been loved every year without ever knowing it. That is a strange thing to find out at 16 years old. That is a good thing to find out, but it is also a strange thing. Has someone loved you from far away without you knowing it? Has someone kept you in their heart for years when you thought you had been forgotten? If you know a person like that, I want you to reach out to them tonight. Do not wait. That is what I would say. Do not wait. Now come back with me, because the strangest visitor of my life was about to walk through that front door. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in the small bed in the apartment above the diner, and I watched the square of yellow light on the ceiling, and I thought about everything. Around 2 in the morning, I got up. I went downstairs in my socks. I made a cup of tea. I sat at the counter. The lamp in the front window was burning. Silas had lit it that evening on his way home from the courthouse. I heard tires on the gravel. A car pulled into the lot. It was not a car I recognized. It was an old blue Chevrolet. The paint was faded. It had Arizona plates. The engine shut off. The driver did not get out. I sat very still at the counter. The driver sat in the car for maybe 5 minutes. I could see the shape of her through the windshield. A woman. Alone. Then the door opened. She got out slowly. She was thin. She wore a light coat that was too thin for a Nebraska night in March. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. It was going gray at the temples, though she was not that old. She looked like a woman who had been driving for a very long time. She stood in the parking lot and looked at the diner. She did not move. I went to the door. I unlocked it. The door opened. She looked up at the sound. She saw me standing in the doorway. Her hand came up to her mouth. I knew who she was. I did not have to be told. She was the woman in the photograph on the office wall. She was the woman with the ponytail. She was the woman with her hand on her belly. She was older now. She was thinner. She was tired in a way that had nothing to do with the drive. But she was the same woman. She was my mother. Sabine Brenner. She had come back. We stood there a long time. Neither of us moved. She was in the parking lot. I was in the doorway. Between us was 30 feet of gravel and 16 years of nothing. Then she said in a voice that was hoarse and low and shaking, I saw about Dad in the paper. I have been driving for 2 days. I did not answer. She looked at the ground. I know, she said. I know I do not have the right to be here. I know that. I did not come to ask for anything. I just needed to see. I just needed to see the diner one more time. I did not know you were here. You did not know I was here. No, I did not know. Trevor never tells me anything. I did not know. She looked up at me. Her eyes were the color of mine. I had never known that. I had never had a mirror for it. I had spent 16 years looking at my own eyes and not knowing whose eyes they were. They were hers. Sabine, I said, because I did not know what else to call her. I could not call her mom. I did not have that word for her. Not yet. Yes. Are you going to leave again? She flinched. She flinched like I had hit her. Then she said, very quietly, I do not know. I have been trying not to. I have been sober for 8 months. I did not know if I could face you. I did not know if I could face any of it. She looked at the diner. I did not know he had died, she said. I did not know until Tuesday. I read about it in a newspaper somebody had left at a coffee shop. I did not know if it was too late. I did not know. I got in the car. I drove. I looked at her. I looked at this woman who had left me in a home when I was 2 months old, who had disappeared for 16 years, who had not come to see my grandfather while he was alive, who was standing in a gravel parking lot in Nebraska at 2 in the morning with a coat too thin for the wind. I did not feel what I thought I would feel. I did not feel rage. I had spent 16 years being told I should feel rage, and now the rage was not there. What I felt instead was something quieter, something older than rage. I felt tired. I felt tired for her. I felt tired for both of us. You should come inside, I said. It is cold. She started to cry. She stood in the gravel and she put her hands over her face and she cried the way I had heard grown women cry only twice in my life. Once at the funeral of a girl at St. Catherine's who had died of leukemia at 11. And once from Ruthie earlier that week in the kitchen when she thought no one was watching. I walked out to her. I did not touch her. I was not ready to touch her. I stood beside her in the cold. There is coffee inside, I said. Come in, I will pour you a cup. She followed me. She sat down at the counter. She kept her hands wrapped around the coffee mug. She did not drink it. She just held it. Her hands were shaking. I sat down at the counter beside her. Not across from her, beside her. 2 stools apart. I did not know what to say. She did not know what to say. The silence was not comfortable, but it was not the silence of enemies either. It was the silence of 2 people who had never known each other who were trying to work out how to begin. After a while, she said, he tried to save me. You were a grandfather. He tried so many times. I could not let him. I was too far gone. I hated him because he loved me, and I was not lovable. That is what it does to you. It makes you hate anyone who still loves you, because you know they are wrong too. He wrote me letters, I said, every year. I did not know that. He kept them in a drawer. She looked at me. He knew you would come back, I said. He believed you would, Ed. I did not come back. You came back. You came back 3 days too late. That is not the same as not coming back. She looked at her coffee. She looked at me. You should hate me, she said. I am too tired to hate you, I said. I have hated you for as long as I can remember. It did not help me. It did not do anything. I am done with it. She started to cry again, quietly, into the coffee mug. I want you to sit with this moment for a second, because I did not know I was going to say those words until I said them. I had spent 16 years hating a woman I had never met. And when she showed up in front of me, I could not hate her anymore. It was gone. Comment down below if you have ever had this happen, if you have ever forgiven someone before you meant to, because it happened to me that night, and I still do not fully understand it. She stayed the night. I put her in the apartment. I slept in booth 6. The vinyl was cracked. It was not comfortable. I did not care. In the morning, Silas came at 6. He walked in and saw the blue Chevrolet with the Arizona plates. He looked at me. Sabine, I said. His face went still. Where is she? Upstairs. She got in around 2. He nodded slowly. He looked toward the ceiling. You okay, honey? I am okay. You want me to run her off? No. He looked at me for a long moment. He nodded again. Whatever you want. Whatever you want, I will do. Sabine came down around 7. She had washed her face. She had changed into a clean shirt from the small bag she had brought. She looked at Silas across the counter. Silas looked at her. Then Silas walked around the counter, and he opened his arms, and he hugged her. She fell into him. She cried into his shoulder. He held her the way you hold someone who has been running for a very long time and does not know how to stop. He would have wanted this, Silas said quietly. He would have wanted this so much. Ruthie came at 8. She saw Sabine and she stopped in the doorway and she put both hands over her mouth. Then she came in and she made scrambled eggs and biscuits and gravy for all of us. And we ate together at booth 6 as the sun came up over Route 9. Sabine did not ask to stay. She did not make promises. She did not know what she was going to do. She said only that she wanted to help. She said she wanted to earn her way back. She said she was a cook and she could work. Ruthie put her at the sink. Sabine washed dishes for 4 hours that morning. She washed every dish we could find. She washed pots that had not been used in a year. Her hands got red from the hot water. She did not stop. I watched her from booth 6. I watched a woman I had believed for 16 years to be a monster, and I saw only a woman doing dishes. On the 5th day, Sabine found the letters. She was cleaning out the closet in the apartment upstairs. She wanted to make herself useful. She wanted to earn her keep. She had said she would sleep on the couch downstairs, but I had put her in the bed, and I had taken the couch, and she had not fought me on it. She was pulling old boxes out of the top of the closet. She got down a shoebox that had gone soft with age. She opened it. She sat down on the bed. She did not come downstairs for lunch. Around 3 in the afternoon, I went up to find her. She was sitting on the edge of the bed with the box in her lap. The letters were spread around her. There were dozens of them, maybe 100, all addressed to her, all in my grandfather's hand. Dear Sabine, they all began. Dear Sabine, I do not know where you are today. I hope you are warm. I hope you are eating. I hope someone is being kind to you. Dear Sabine, your daughter is 7. She would look like you at 7. I would send you a picture if I had one. I do not have one. I have never seen her. Dear Sabine, I am not angry. I want you to know that. I have never been angry. I have only ever been sad. Dear Sabine, come home when you can. The door will be open. The light will be on. It has always been on. It will always be on. Love, Dad. He had written to her too. For 26 years, he had not sent them because he had not known where she was. But he had written them anyway. Sabine looked up at me when I came in. Her face was wet. She did not try to hide it. He never gave up on me, she said. I gave up on him. He never gave up on me. I sat down beside her on the bed. I put my hand on hers. It was the first time I had touched my mother. Her hand was cold. I held it anyway. We sat like that for a long time. Neither of us spoke. Downstairs, I could hear Ruthie moving pans on the stove. I could hear Jessie laughing at something Silas had said. I could hear the front door open and the small note of the bell as someone came in. Life was going on downstairs. Up here, a mother and a daughter were sitting on a bed holding hands for the first time. Both were true. Both were happening at once. That is the way life works, I have come to understand. The kitchen keeps going, the bell keeps ringing, the soup keeps simmering, and upstairs, quietly, without anyone else knowing, people are learning how to touch each other for the first time. 2 weeks passed. We opened the diner on a Saturday morning in early April. The sky was pale blue. Silas had put a new sign up on the pole out front. He had made it himself from a sheet of reclaimed tin. His grandson, Jesse, had painted the letters. It said, "The Lantern," and underneath in smaller letters, "Open late, lights on, everybody eats." Ruthie ran the front of the house. Jesse bussed tables and worked the register. Silas fixed things that broke, which was most things. Sabine cooked in the back. She did not talk much. She worked. She made biscuits. She made pot roast the way my grandmother had made it. Ruthie stood beside her the first week and showed her. Sabine cried while she made the biscuits. Ruthie led her. I stood behind the counter. I was 16 years old. I had never worked in a restaurant. I did not know what I was doing. Ruthie taught me. Sabine taught me. Silas taught me. I burned the first batch of pancakes. I overcooked eggs. I dropped a plate. Nobody yelled at me. Nobody made me feel small. I began to learn. The regulars came in every day now. Some for breakfast, some for coffee, some just to sit in a booth and read the paper because home was too quiet. The Rooney family came with their tall 12-year-old son, who now sat in booth 6 and drank chocolate milk. Roy Hendricks came in on his lunch break from the feed store. The man from the bluff brought his wife and his 2 daughters in on Sunday afternoons. Margaret, the school teacher, came for Wednesday lunch. At night, we flipped the sign to closed, but we left the lamp on in the window. The coffee can filled up. It filled up faster than my grandfather had ever seen it fill up, because the whole town knew now. The whole town was in on it. 3 weeks after the courthouse on a Tuesday night around 9, a car pulled into the gravel lot with a broken headlight. The bell over the door gave its small note. A young woman came in, maybe 20, skinny, nervous. She had a boy with her, maybe 4 years old. He was wearing pajamas. He was rubbing his eyes. She said, "I heard, at the truck stop, they said I could come here." I stepped out from behind the counter. I said, "Sit anywhere. Booth 6 is the best one. What can I get for you both?" She sat down. The boy climbed into the booth. He looked at me with big, serious eyes. She said, "I do not have any money." I said, "Neither did any of us once. Come on, let's feed him first." I went into the kitchen. Sabine was there. She had heard. She had already started the flat top. She looked at me. I looked at her. She said quietly, "Grilled cheese for the boy corner to corner." "Corner to corner," I said. We cooked together. She made the grilled cheese. I made scrambled eggs and biscuits for the mother. I poured milk for the boy in a chipped white glass that had probably been used 1,000 times. We brought the plates out ourselves. We set them down in booth 6. The mother watched us set them down. She watched the boy pick up the sandwich and take a bite. His face changed. He smiled. He had cheese on his chin. The mother started to cry. I sat down across from her. I did not say anything. She said, "I did not know where else to go." I said, "You are in the right place. Eat. And if you are still around at close the light stays on, nobody is putting you back on that road in the dark." She cried harder. I looked up. Sabine was standing in the kitchen doorway. She was watching us. Her face was still. Then she nodded to me. Once. Just once. I looked out the front window. The lamp was burning. The light was falling in a yellow square across the gravel lot. Route 9 stretched off into the dark in both directions. Somewhere out there tonight or tomorrow, or the night after, someone else would come around the bend and see a small brick building with a yellow square of light in the window. And they would know the way this whole county had known for 42 years now, that as long as that light was on, someone was awake, and the door would open, and they would be fed, and no one would ask them a single thing. My grandfather kept that light burning for 41 years, so that no one would walk off into the dark the way Elias Marsh had walked in November of 1983. I have a mother now. She washes dishes in the back. She does not sleep well. She has bad nights. She sits at the counter sometimes in the dark and stares at her hands. I sit with her. I do not talk. She does not talk. We sit. I have a grandmother now. She's been dead for 16 years. But I know what her biscuits taste like. I know how she pinned her hair back. I know she taught almost every adult in this town how to read. I know I have her mouth. I have a grandfather now. He has been dead for 4 months. But I know his handwriting. I know his coffee. I know the man he was because his whole town has told me, because he documented himself in 4 cloth-bound ledgers, because he wrote me 16 letters and kept every one of them in a drawer for me to find. I have a family now. It is a strange family. It is Ruthie and Silas and Jesse. It is Harold Vance and Margaret and Roy Hendricks and Mrs. Okafor in Lincoln, who calls once a week to check on me. It is a whole town that watched a man keep a light burning for 41 years And that decided without ever saying so out loud to keep it burning for one more generation. I have a home now. I did not know that word before this March. Home. I had lived in a building for 16 years. A building is not a home. A building is a roof. A home is where somebody kept a lamp burning in a window on the chance that you might come. Home is where a coffee can on a shelf says feed the next one, and somebody actually does. Home is a booth in the corner where the vinyl is patched because a baby was born on it once, and where an old man drank coffee every Tuesday morning for 2 years because he could not stand to be alone in his own kitchen. Home is a chalkboard that says whatever you need. I have a home now. Finally, at 16 years old, I have a home. One last thing. Last week, a woman drove all the way from Colorado to sit in booth 6. She had heard the story somehow. She said her father had passed through Millbrook in 1991. He had come home changed. He had told her once about an old man in Nebraska who fed him a bowl of soup at 2 in the morning and asked him nothing. She said her father had died last year. She said she had needed to see the booth. She sat there for an hour. She did not order anything. Then she stood up. She put $100 bill in the coffee can. She said, feed the next one. She walked out. I sat down in booth 6 after she left. I put my hand on the vinyl where her hand had been. My grandfather has been gone for a year now, and people are still coming to say goodbye to him. People whose names he never knew. People he fed in the middle of the night 30 years ago. They are still coming. A light in a window on a highway. That was all he ever did. And it turns out that was enough. That was more than enough. That was maybe the only thing that ever really is. I am going to end this story here. I know we have been together a long time. But before I let you go, I want to say one more thing. If you are listening to this and you are somewhere in your life where you feel alone, I want you to hear something. There may be people out there who love you and whom you have never met. There may be people who wrote you letters they were not allowed to send. There may be people who kept a light burning in a window somewhere on a highway you have never driven, hoping you would find your way to it eventually. I did not know I had a grandfather. I did not know I had a grandmother. I did not know I had a mother who was still alive. I did not know I had a town. I know now, and if this story has meant something to you tonight, please subscribe to this channel. I tell stories about hope, about second chances, about finding home in places you did not expect. If you have your own story, tell me. Leave it in the comments. I read every one, every single one. Tell me, have you ever found family in a place you did not expect? Have you ever forgiven someone before you meant to? Have you ever kept a light burning for someone who did not know you were doing it? I would love to hear. Thank you for staying with me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring about a girl named Marin in a diner on Route 9 who found a light in a window and never let it go out. The light is on. The door is open. And if you are out there tonight on some road you did not choose in some dark, you did not ask for, and you need a place to sit down and eat something hot and be asked nothing at all, come find us. Route 9, Millbrook, Nebraska. We will be waiting.